Ciao and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to model a simple wooden table. I would like to thank you all the good comments that you left me on the various social media channels. If you didn't subscribe to my channel, click subscribe now. Also remember to click on the small bell so you can have updates on every new tutorial I'm gonna post. Let's jump in this new tutorial. We delete the cube, the camera, the light. We make cube. We can set the dimensions to 250, 30, 3. Then we need to make sure that it's properly UV unwrapped. This is because we are going to move the UV later in the video. Open the UV editor. We enter in edit mode and we already have the UV of our first cube here. We select all the edges we need to use to unwrap and mark the seams. We press Ctrl E, we mark the seams and then we press Alt U unwrap. So we already have here. We alter the shape, we need to apply the sizes. Apply scale. If we go back to edit mode and we unwrap, now we have the model unwrapped properly. We need to duplicate our shape and we need to align them properly so we can create some kind of boards. We activate the snapping, then we start duplicating our shape with Shift D. We snap to the edge, and when we move them with the snapping active, they basically attach to each other. Now I would like to smooth the edges a little bit. We go into the modifier tab and we add a bevel modifier. We play a little bit with the bevel. We don't really need a huge amount of beveling, but maybe we can increase the segments so it becomes a little bit more round and smooth. Then we select all the other axes of our table and we press Ctrl L to apply the modifier so the bevels are applied to all of them. Then we need to pass to the legs of our table. So we create another shape, another cube. This time is gonna be 12 centimeters per 12 centimeters per 76 in height. We still have the snapping active, but this time we set on face and we move this until it touches the face. Now we move our leg on the side and we need to make sure that we can mirror everything. So I am going to set the pivot point to the center of this and I can move everything. I put the cursor to the selection at the center, so the cursor now is on the edge between the second and the third board. Then I set the origin to the 3D cursor for all of them. It doesn't really change too much, it's just to move them because so I make mistakes. To position everything properly, all I have to do now is mirroring. I can use another modifier and this time is the mirror modifier, and I will mirror on the x-axis and on the y-axis. After doing that, I'm going to apply the mirror modifier and I will copy again the bevel, but before doing that I will first separate the shapes So Ctrl L, P separate by, actually I can select everything, and P separate by loose part. And in this way I have 4 objects. Then I can select the 4 of them, I can select one of the board, I can press Ctrl L, and I apply the modifiers as well. So now all the modifiers are applied to our legs. Adding a new cube, we can scale it visually, so on the Z axis, and maybe if I stay like this it is better. I can press the numpad to go on the side view, and I can move here. I still have the snapping on, so I'm gonna snap this object to this surface. In the meantime, I have unwrapped the leg as I did for the top board. The leg. Now, unfortunately, we will have to do the same for the other 4. So I delete what I created, but I can reapply the mirror modifier. And in this way we have our 4 shades, and I can simply separate by loose part again. P separate by loose part. I can do the same with this part. I again need to UV unwrap it first. I can mirror it again, so I just need to put the pivot point to the 3D cursor that's still in the center, and then I add a mirror modifier, and this time I mirror on the y-axis, but not on the x-axis. I am isolated my selection every time, so I can work just with the elements that I'm dealing with. I then apply my mirroring to edit mode, and I separate by loose parts. And our table is finished. Now we need to pass to the texturing. We prepare 2 textures for our table. We need first to separate the windows, and having the shader editor on the top and the UV editor on the bottom. We create a first material for the first board, and we call it wood. We create a second material that's gonna be the parts where the wood is gonna be cut. We can use viewport shading that allows us to see the materials and the colors. I already prepared the materials and I divided them. So the first is a painted wood, that's gonna be our main material. We apply color, then we need a normal map and a roughness map. We connect the diffuse to the base color. We set the roughness to non-color data, and the normals, even if the map is purplish, is gonna be non-color data as well. Then we connect the roughness to the roughness, and the normals should be connected to the normal, but the socket is a different color, so we need to add a vector normal map. We want to project this map on our model using a UV map that we created. So I use the Node Wrangler, and I suggest to install that add-on because it saves you a lot of time. I'm gonna put the link to the description. With the Node Wrangler, you simply have to press a combination of keys to add nodes quickly. In this case, it's Ctrl T to add a texture coordinate and a mapping node. So the three of them share the same mapping. We go back to our table and I actually inverted the textures. So I can delete these and I can rename this wood and the other wood. And the other is gonna be side wood. So we play with the texture coordinate to make sure that the alignment of our texture is right. I would rotate these 90 degrees on the Z axis. And voila. Then we need to select the other boards, this one plus the ones on the bottom, and the one where we have the material applied needs to be the last selected. We press Ctrl L and in this time we apply the materials, so the whole table shares the same material. I probably forgot to add this too, but we can do it now. Now, the main problem that we are facing is that each material is projected the same way, and here comes the reason why I decided to UV unwrap all of them before, because in the UV editor, selecting each single element, I can enter in edit mode and I can select element and move the map. So in this way we can add some variation. The second thing that we are going to do is defining the sides of our table. So we work on the side wood. We first create the material. I already have the textures that I downloaded from Sys. In this step, you have to repeat what we already learned and assign the new material to the selected polygon on the sides of the boards. The next thing that we are going to do is creating a small tablecloth. First, we add a plane. We move the plane slightly higher than the table and we rotate it. Then we need to subdivide our plane. So remember that when you create a plane, the plane is already UV unwrapped unless you change the sizes. Subdivide 10 times and then we subdivide it again. Before doing anything, I would work on the texture for our tablecloth. So I open again the shader editor. I don't need the UV editor because the plane that builds the tablecloth is already UV unwrapped. We create a new material with the color, the normal map and the roughness. And the other is gonna be the symbol. It's a logo in black and white. We need to make sure that a color and the fabric are gonna be mixed with a mixed RGB node. We use the logo that we put in the mapping as well as a factor for our two elements. So as you can see, now we have the bottom color that's on the white part of our logo and the color of the clothing that's on the black part. We don't like that, so we need to invert it. So now the logo is gonna be white and the rest is gonna be clothes. I would also change a little bit the color of the clothes, and to do so I can add a color ramp and I can play with the two colors. I would go to a more bluish material. And change it later just in case. The upper part can be something similar. I can simply duplicate the color ramp and I can change the color and use the new color ramp as the second color. I would like to render my logo as a metallic material, so I can use this guy that I'm gonna set as a non-color data also in the metallic socket. The roughness is gonna be also affected by our logo. We need to duplicate the mix RGB node and we can simply place our logo as a factor. Remember that completely white means completely reflective and in this case completely white means completely rough because it's a roughness map. At the moment, this is what we have. The whiter, the more rough. We want this to be a little bit darker and we want the socket to be inverted, so this one is gonna be darker. I select one of the board of the table and I apply on the physics tab a collision. I do the same for the other parts where the cloth can collide. And then I apply a cloth physics to the table sheet. I start my animation and the sheet is gonna fall on the table and collide with it. When I am happy with a certain position, all I have to do is going into the modifiers and apply the modifiers. We add a plane and using the snapping we snap the plane to the bottom of the leg. After that, and here we move fast forward, I apply a material to the plane and I scale the plane up so I can create a floor for my table. The second passage is lighting my scene with an HDR image. I can add a camera. We add a camera, we add an empty plane axis and we add a curve circle. We scale the curve a little bit and we select our camera and we add a follow path. The path that we are gonna follow is the Bezier circle. Now, when we apply the follow path, the camera moves in relation to the path. To sort it out, we simply have to put the location to 0. We can zero the rotation as well, but the camera needs to focus the null object. So with the camera selected, we add a track to, and we select which object we want to track. That is our empty. We can find it here or we can select. So as you can see, the camera now will always focus to our empty, even if we move the path. We can move the empty to focus the camera in the proper position. All we have to do is entering the camera and moving the empty. To animate the camera, we need to modify the offset of the follow path constraint. At frame 0, we set a keyframe, and at frame 250 in our case, we set the offset to 100. We set a keyframe to lock this position, and as you can see, the camera rotates. I feel that besides the HDR image, this scene is still a little bit too dark. I'm gonna add a couple of lights. And our scene is ready. All we have to do now is rendering and use for whatever we want. I hope you like this tutorial. If you have any request, ask me on the comments or write me on my social channels. I will be happy to create tutorial for your needs and to work on something that I know is gonna really help someone. For today is everything. Please remember to subscribe to my channel. See you next week with another, I hope, exciting tutorial. Bye!